First Trust. Rowan Hayes stood at the observation window of the Interstellar Youth Exchange Center, watching Earth's sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The massive facility, built in the heart of New Zealand's countryside, represented humanity's newest role in the galactic community. Not as warriors, not as traders, but as caretakers. Director Hayes, the facility's AI chimed, incoming transmission from an unregistered vessel. They're requesting emergency landing clearance. Rowan straightened their uniform, brushing off invisible dust. 3 years running Earth's first alien childcare facility had taught them to expect the unexpected. Source: the vessel appears to be ZK Thrax. The air in the room seemed to chill. The ZK Thrax were legendary among spacefaring species, apex predators who'd evolved in the crushing gravity of a super-Earth, their society built on strength and survival. They'd never, in their recorded history, entrusted their young to any other species. Patch them through, Rowan said, moving to the communication console. The screen flickered to life, revealing a ZK Thrax elder. Their crystalline exoskeleton caught the light of their ship's interior, sending rainbow refractions across the video feed. "This is High Matron Vexterra of the ZK Thrax Collective," the translator rendered in crisp English. "We require your services." Rowan maintained their professional composure, though their heart raced. "Welcome, High Matron. I'm Director Hayes of the Interstellar Youth Exchange Center. How may we assist? Our creche ship has suffered critical damage. We carry 12 hatchlings, all in their first molt. Our environmental systems are failing." The ZK Thrax's auxiliary mandibles clicked in what Rowan had learned was a sign of extreme stress. "We've heard rumors." "Rumors?" Rowan prompted, already signaling their team to prepare for emergency intake. "That humans possess unique capabilities in caring for young. That your species has some inherent gift for nurturing even the most dangerous offspring." The High Matron's compound eyes shifted. "We were skeptical, but we intercepted communications from the Araxian hive about their experience here." Rowan remembered that case. The Araxian larvae had required constant movement and specific atmospheric vibrations to develop properly. The solution? A modified anti-gravity chamber and a volunteer staff band playing low-frequency jazz. "We would be honored to help," Rowan said, activating the landing protocols. "Though I should warn you, our methods can seem unconventional." The ship landed 10 minutes later, and Rowan met the High Matron's delegation in the specialized intake bay. The ZK Thrax hatchlings were each the size of a small car, their crystalline bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Traditional care methods would have required gravity levels that would crush most of the facility's equipment. The hatchlings require precise pressure gradients during their molt, the High Matron explained, her own exoskeleton creaking with concern. Without them, their new forms may develop incorrectly. Rowan watched as one of the hatchlings attempted to climb the wall, leaving deep scratches in the reinforced material. Their mind was already racing through possibilities. Junior Director Fleming, they called to their second-in-command, "Remember that wave pool project you've been tinkering with?" Kai Fleming's eyes lit up. "The one with the programmable pressure chambers? It's not tested for anything this large, but..." They pulled out their tablet, fingers flying over the calculations. "If we modify the resonance frequency and add the sonic dampeners from Section C." "High Matron," Rowan turned back to the ZK Thrax elder, "how do your young typically experience pressure changes in their natural habitat?" "They would burrow through different layers of our world's crust, following the natural gradient." Her auxiliary mandibles clicked again. "But in controlled environments, we use mechanical chambers." "What if," Rowan said, watching another hatchling attempt to dig through the floor, "we could recreate that natural experience? Not just the pressure, but the entire sensory journey?" Over the next 48 hours, the facility's engineering team, led by Kai, transformed the facility's largest chamber into something unprecedented. They combined wave pool technology with programmable gravity fields, creating a space where the hatchlings could burrow through varying pressure gradients as if moving through rock layers, but without the need for actual excavation. The first test came when the smallest hatchling, dubbed Sparkles by the human staff, much to the bewilderment of the Zk-Thrax, entered its molt phase. The chamber hummed to life, its invisible currents guiding the young one through the pressure changes it needed. The High Matron watched, all four hands clasped together, as the hatchling's exoskeleton began to shift and change. "Impossible," she whispered as the molt completed perfectly. "You've recreated millions of years of evolution using swimming pool technology?" "More or less," Rowan smiled, watching as the other hatchlings began gravitating toward the chamber, drawn by instinct to the familiar pressure patterns. Sometimes the best solutions aren't about matching the original conditions exactly, but about understanding the core need and finding a new way to meet it. Word spread quickly through the galactic community. Within weeks, the facility received inquiries from 17 different species, all considered among the most dangerous or difficult to care for in the galaxy. The Zk-Thrax hatchlings, meanwhile, not only completed their molt successfully but showed unprecedented development in their cognitive abilities. Apparently, the variation in pressure patterns had created a form of enrichment no one had thought possible before. As Rowan watched the last of the Zk-Thrax delegation depart 2 months later, they reflected on humanity's unique position in the galaxy. They weren't the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But they had something else, an endless capacity for finding unconventional solutions, for seeing past traditional limitations, and most importantly, for caring about the well-being of any young creature, no matter how alien. The facility's AI chimed again. "Director Hayes, incoming transmission from the Magnetar Collective. They're requesting information about our childcare services for their energy-based offspring." Rowan grinned. Another impossible challenge. Another chance to prove why humans had become the galaxy's most trusted caretakers. Put them through. "And Kai? You might want to start thinking about how we can turn one of the rooms into a contained plasma field." Chaos and comfort. The success with the Zk-Thrax hatchlings changed everything. Within 3 months, the Interstellar Youth Exchange Center had transformed from an experimental facility into the galaxy's most sought-after childcare institution. Rowan Hayes stood in the central control room, watching dozens of holographic displays showing various chambers throughout the facility. "Director," Kai Fleming called from their station, "the Magnetar younglings are approaching their energy spike cycle. Chamber 4's containment fields are ready." "And the Void Crawler eggs?" Rowan asked, eyes fixed on a particularly dark chamber where shadows seemed to move of their own accord. "Temperature stable at near absolute zero," their newest staff member, Dr. Juniper Blackwood, reported. The quantum physicist had joined them after the facility started accepting energy-based lifeforms. "Though I still don't understand how they're managing to absorb light even through our strongest illumination systems." A series of musical chimes interrupted them. The facility's warning system had learned that traditional alarms upset several of their charges. "Multiple incoming vessels," the AI announced. 3 Pyroxian ships, 1 deep swim transport, and, oh dear. "What is it?" Rowan asked, already moving toward the emergency protocol station. "A quantum hive colony ship. They're all requesting emergency docking." The room fell silent. Each of these species required completely different environmental conditions. Pyroxians lived in temperatures that could melt steel. Deep swim young needed pressures that would crush most starships. And the quantum hive, they existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. "Right," Rowan said, pulling up the facility's schematics. "Kai, start reconfiguring the east wing for the Pyroxians. Juniper, calculate if we can safely house quantum hive young without them phasing through the walls. Everyone else, prepare for emergency protocol Omega. The one we designed after the Zk-Thrax incident or the new one after the sentient gas cloud babies, someone called out. The new one, Rowan replied, already heading for the docking bay. The one we made up yesterday. The next few hours were controlled chaos. The Pyroxian young, each glowing like miniature suns, needed immediate placement in containment fields before they melted through the docking bay. The deep-swim infants, looking like iridescent whales the size of buses, had to be transferred through a series of pressure locks that Kai had somehow rigged using modified coffee makers and spare parts from the kitchen. But it was the quantum hive that presented the real challenge. Their young existed in a superposition of states, appearing and disappearing at random intervals. Traditional containment was impossible, they needed something that could exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. What about the bubble wrap? Juniper suggested, watching as a quantum hive child flickered between dimensions. The what? Rowan asked, ducking as a Pyroxian toddler shot a small plasma bolt overhead. Remember how the ZK Thrax hatchlings were attracted to specific pressure patterns? The quantum hive young seemed to respond to periodic disturbances in spacetime. What if we created a field of quantum bubbles? Like bubble wrap, but at the subatomic level? It was exactly the kind of impossible solution that had become their specialty. Using modified quantum field generators and, surprisingly, actual bubble wrap as a template for the field pattern, they created a space where the quantum hive young could exist comfortably in all their dimensional states. The real crisis hit during dinner time. The Pyroxian young needed to consume plasma, the deep-swim infants required supercompressed matter, and the quantum hive children had to absorb probability itself. All in the same general vicinity. We need a buffer zone, Rowan muttered, watching the chaos unfold. That's when they noticed something strange. The quantum hive young were phasing in and out near the Pyroxian feeding area, and each time they did, they left behind tiny pockets of altered spacetime. Juniper, they called. Are you seeing this? The physicist was already running calculations. The quantum fluctuations are creating micropockets of stable space. Director, I think we just accidentally invented dimensional compartmentalization. By adapting this phenomenon, they created a feeding area where different species could exist in essentially the same space but in different dimensional phases. It wasn't just a solution to their immediate problem, it was a breakthrough in xenophysics that would later revolutionize interstellar travel. The day ended with all young ones safely settled, though the facility now resembled something out of a fever dream. One room contained quantum bubbles that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Another had been converted into a miniature star nursery. The coffee maker in the staff room had somehow been modified to brew drinks in crushing deep space pressures. A quantum bubble just ate my paperwork, Kai reported, sounding more amused than concerned. I think it's trying to solve differential equations. File it under unexpected enrichment activities, Rowan replied, making a note to requisition more quantum-stable office supplies. As they watched the various young ones settle in for their rest cycles, some glowing, some phasing, some existing in probabilistic clouds, Rowan reflected on how far they'd come. The facility had evolved beyond anything they'd imagined, driven by necessity and human creativity. The AI chimed again. Director Hayes? The Crystalline Collective is asking if we have space for a group of their young. Apparently, they vibrate at frequencies that shatter most conventional matter. Rowan shared a look with their team. Another impossible challenge. Another chance to prove that human ingenuity could overcome any obstacle. Tell them, Rowan said with a smile, that we'll figure something out. We always do. Somewhere in the facility, a quantum hive child phased through a wall, leaving behind equations that would later win someone a Nobel Prize. A Pyroxian youngster sneezed, creating a temporary miniature sun. And in the staff room, the quantum-modified coffee maker produced what several scientists would later swear was the best cup of coffee in any dimension. Just another day at the galaxy's most impossible nursery. The diplomatic incident. The message that shook the Interstellar Youth Exchange Center arrived during what the staff had dubbed quantum snack time. Rowan Hayes was helping a group of Pyroxian toddlers practice controlled plasma emission when the facility's AI interrupted with an urgent priority alert. Director Hayes, the AI's voice carried an unusual note of concern. The Ancestral Collective is approaching Earth's orbit. Kai Fleming, who had been adjusting the quantum containment fields, dropped their tablet. Even Juniper Blackwood looked up from her calculations, face pale. The Ancestral Collective was one of the oldest species in known space, beings of pure thought and energy who had achieved spaceflight when Earth's first mammals were still scurrying between dinosaur feet. They've never left their sector of space, Juniper whispered. Not in recorded history. They have now, Rowan replied, already moving toward the command center. And something tells me this isn't a social call. The collective's ship appeared in orbit like a tear in reality itself, a vessel that seemed to be made of crystallized thoughts and frozen time. Their transmission came through on all frequencies simultaneously, in every known language, and several that hadn't been invented yet. We observe with concern, the message began, the gathering of young ones from across the galaxy in the care of humans. The way they said humans made it sound like they were describing an interesting bacteria. This is unprecedented. Unnatural. It must be evaluated. Within hours, the facility was hosting its most challenging visitors yet. The ancestral representatives manifested as shimmering columns of light that somehow managed to convey disapproval without having actual faces. They moved through the facility, observing everything, their presence causing temporary disruptions in the laws of physics. Explain, one of them demanded, watching as Rowan and their team handled the morning routine. Why do these species trust you with their young? Before Rowan could answer, chaos erupted in the quantum nursery. A young void crawler, usually content in its absolute zero chamber, had somehow phased through its containment field, likely disrupted by the ancestral's presence. The shadow-like creature was heading straight for a group of Pyroxian infants, whose plasma-hot bodies would vaporize it on contact. What happened next would later be described in a dozen different ways by a dozen different species. Rowan moved without hesitation, grabbing a prototype quantum field generator from Juniper's lab. With one hand, they activated a localized gravity well to slow the void crawler, while using the other to create a prismatic energy barrier that separated the temperature extremes. But it wasn't enough. The void crawler was still moving, driven by instinct and fear. That's when Rowan did something that made the ancestral beings vibrate with what might have been shock. They started singing. It wasn't just any song. It was a lullaby they had learned from studying the quantum harmonics of void crawler egg clusters. The sound, combined with the improvised containment fields, created a pocket of spacetime that perfectly matched the conditions of a void crawler nest. The young one slowed, its shadowy form swirling in patterns that their xenobiologists had identified as contentment. The Pyroxian infants, far from being disturbed, began emitting plasma pulses in harmony with the lullaby's rhythm. Fascinating, one of the ancestral beings hummed. You used quantum mechanics to sing a lullaby? Sometimes, Rowan said, carefully guiding the void crawler back to its proper chamber, the most advanced solution isn't the best one. Young ones, regardless of species, need more than just technical perfection. They need care, creativity, and sometimes a good song. The ancestrals observed for 3 more days. They watched as the human staff handled crises that should have been impossible to solve. A quantum hive child having an existential crisis, literally, that threatened to collapse local reality. A deep swim infant's first attempt at psychic communication that gave everyone in the facility synchronized hiccups. A ZK Thrax hatchling that imprinted on a maintenance robot and refused to molt without it present. Each time, the humans found solutions that went beyond mere technical fixes. They created games that taught quantum hive young how to stabilize their own dimensional phases. They established a facility-wide psychic support network using modified coffee machines, the coffee maker had become surprisingly central to many of their innovations. They even organized an impromptu robot parade to help the ZK-Thrax hatchling feel more secure during its molt. On the final day of their inspection, the ancestral collective gathered in the facility's central chamber. Their form had shifted, now resembling a aurora borealis trying to solve a puzzle. "We have reached a conclusion," they announced. "Your methods are unorthodox, improbable, often seemingly impossible." Their light patterns shifted in what might have been amusement. Yet they work. Not despite their apparent chaos, but because of it. "We call it organized chaos," Rowan explained. "Every species has different needs, different ways of learning and growing. Our job isn't to force them into a single system, but to create an environment where each can thrive in their own way." Indeed, the ancestrals hummed. "We have also observed something unexpected. The young ones in your care aren't merely surviving, they're developing abilities and adaptations we hadn't thought possible. Your facility's chaos is actually accelerating their evolution." The implications of this statement would later shake the scientific community. But at that moment, Rowan was more concerned with the Pyroxian toddler who had just discovered they could use quantum fluctuations to enhance their plasma bursts. "We will be sending our own young," the ancestrals announced, causing several laws of physics to hold an emergency consultation. "They have much to learn from your creative approach." As the ancestral ship departed, leaving behind several temporarily inverted gravity wells and a lot of paperwork that now existed in 5 dimensions simultaneously, Rowan gathered their team. "So," Kai said, reviewing the facility's new modifications for beings of pure thought and energy, "anyone know any good lullabies in quantum harmonic frequencies?" "I might have a few ideas," Juniper replied, already calculating how to convert their quantum bubble wrap invention for non-corporeal entities. "Though we might need to upgrade the coffee maker again." Rowan smiled, watching as their impossible nursery prepared for its next challenge. The galaxy's oldest civilization had just validated their approach, but more importantly, they had proved that sometimes the most advanced civilizations could learn something from the species that still remembered what it meant to simply care. The facility's AI chimed once more. "Director Hayes? The ancestral young ones are requesting bedtime stories. Apparently, they want to know more about this human concept of imagination." "Well," Rowan said, "I suppose it's time to teach beings of pure energy how to dream." Trial by fire. The first warning came from the ancestral young ones. Being entities of pure energy and thought, they perceived quantum fluctuations that even the facility's most advanced sensors couldn't detect. Their usually orderly thought patterns suddenly became erratic, creating ripples of concerned energy through their quantum nursery. "Director Hayes," the facility's AI announced, its voice carrying unusual urgency, "I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies approaching Earth's orbit. The readings are unprecedented." Rowan Hayes was already moving, their years of experience handling impossible situations kicking into high gear. "Kai, start emergency protocols." "Juniper, what are we looking at?" Dr. Juniper Blackwood's hands flew over her quantum interface, her face growing increasingly pale. "It's a quantum storm, Director. A big one. The kind that can tear holes in reality itself." The facility had weathered many challenges, but a quantum storm was different. These rare phenomena could distort the very fabric of spacetime, creating zones where physics itself became unreliable. For a facility housing young ones from across the galaxy, each requiring specific environmental conditions to survive, this wasn't just dangerous, it was potentially catastrophic. "How long?" Rowan asked, watching as the first gravitational waves began affecting their outer shields. 20 minutes, maybe less, Juniper replied. "The storm's moving faster than it should be possible. It's almost as if it's being drawn to something," Kai finished, looking up from their station. "Director, the quantum signature, it's resonating with our containment fields. All those different species, all those various energy patterns were maintaining. "We've created a beacon," Rowan realized. They looked around at their charges, Pyroxian infants glowing like miniature stars, void crawler young swimming through shadows, quantum hive children existing in multiple dimensions, and now the ancestral young ones, their energy patterns growing more agitated by the second. The storm hit harder than anyone had predicted. Reality began to fragment around the facility's outer walls. In the Pyroxian nursery, gravity reversed itself every 3 seconds. The void crawler chambers started leaking absolute zero temperatures into the corridors. The quantum hive young found themselves stuck in single-dimensional states, causing them intense distress. "The containment fields are failing." Kai shouted over the sound of physics having an existential crisis. "We can't maintain separate environments anymore." That's when Rowan had an idea, the kind of impossible, probably crazy idea that had become their specialty. "What if we don't try to maintain them?" "What?" Juniper looked up from her failing calculations. "All this time, we've been creating separate environments, keeping everything isolated. But what if that's making us more vulnerable? What if instead, we—" Rowan gestured expansively, "let everything mix?" "That's impossible," Juniper protested. "The temperature differentials alone would create new quantum states," Kai suddenly interrupted, their eyes lighting up with understanding. "Like when we discovered the quantum hive young could stabilize Pyroxian plasma emissions." They had minutes to implement their plan. As the storm tore at the facility's outer layers, the team began a controlled collapse of their containment systems, but in a very specific way. They used the quantum fluctuations from the ancestral young ones to create a framework, the plasma from the Pyroxian infants as an energy source, and the absolute zero fields from the void crawlers as stabilizers. The result defied every known law of physics. The facility became a single, impossibly stable environment where seemingly contradictory states coexisted. Pyroxian young played with void crawlers, their extreme temperatures creating beautiful quantum auroras instead of mutual destruction. The quantum hive children found they could exist in all dimensions simultaneously, their various states actually helping to anchor local reality. The storm raged for 6 hours. When it finally passed, what remained wasn't just a surviving facility, it was something entirely new. The various species' young ones had not only adapted to their shared environment but had begun to thrive in ways nobody had predicted. The Pyroxian infants are using quantum states to control their plasma emissions, Juniper reported, reviewing the data with amazement. The void crawlers have learned to manipulate local temperature gradients. And the quantum hive young. They're teaching the ancestral children how to play multidimensional hide and seek. But how is this possible? Kai asked, watching as a Pyroxian toddler and a void crawler child collaborated to create a stunning display of quantum frozen fire. Because we stopped trying to recreate their natural environments, Rowan replied, understanding dawning. Instead, we let them create something new together. Something that could only exist here, with all of them working together. The discovery revolutionized their approach to interspecies care. The facility maintained basic safety measures, but now encouraged controlled interaction between different species' young ones. They discovered that challenges which seemed impossible for one species alone could be solved through cooperation with others. Word spread quickly through the galactic community. The facility that had survived a quantum storm by breaking every rule of conventional xenobiology became legendary. More species began sending their young, not just for care, but for what they began calling evolutionary enrichment. As Rowan watched a group of ancestral young ones teaching Pyroxian infants how to shape quantum fire into complex thought patterns, while void crawler children created shadow puppets that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, they realized something profound. They hadn't just created a safe space for alien young ones, they'd created a crucible for the next stage of galactic evolution. The facility's AI chimed in with its usual timing. Director Hayes? We're receiving a transmission from a species that exists only in probability waves. They're asking if we have room for their quantum superposition children. Rowan looked at their team, saw the familiar mix of excitement and determination in their eyes. Tell them, they said with a smile, that we're probably going to need a bigger quantum playroom. In the background, a Pyroxian child sneezed, accidentally creating a small Big Bang, while an ancestral young one quickly converted the excess energy into a collection of quantum butterflies. Just another day at the nursery where impossible things happened before breakfast, and sometimes during it, after it, and in several dimensions simultaneously. Legacy of Care. 5 years after the quantum storm incident, the Interstellar Youth Exchange Center had evolved beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Rowan Hayes stood in the newly constructed observation dome, watching Earth's first graduation ceremony for interspecies care specialists. Below, human caregivers from every corner of Earth trained alongside alien species who had come to learn what they now called the human approach. Director Kai called from their new position as head of innovation. The Galactic Council representatives are arriving for the ceremony. The Council's arrival marked a historic moment. After years of observing humanity's success with interspecies childcare, they had finally decided to formally recognize Earth's unique contribution to galactic society. Remember when we thought the biggest challenge would be keeping the Pyroxian young ones from melting through the floor? Juniper asked, now sporting the title of Chief Quantum Development Officer. Her latest project involved teaching probability wave beings how to play peekaboo across multiple quantum states. Now that seems almost simple, Rowan replied, watching as a group of human trainees practiced quantum lullabies under the guidance of an ancestral elder. The songs could now be heard across 11 dimensions simultaneously, thanks to modifications to their ever-evolving quantum bubble wrap technology. The facility had grown into a sprawling complex that defied conventional architecture. Some sections existed in multiple quantum states at once, while others featured gravity that changed direction based on the emotional needs of its occupants. The infamous coffee maker had been officially classified as a sentient quantum computing device after it started offering life advice along with its interdimensional beverages. The Galactic Council's arrival was appropriately spectacular. Their ship materialized in 7 different dimensions simultaneously, a courtesy to the various species now present at the facility. The council members themselves represented the most diverse gathering of advanced civilizations ever assembled, from energy beings to quantum manifestations to species that existed primarily as mathematical concepts. Humanity, the council's primary speaker began, their voice translating across all known and several theoretical forms of communication, has demonstrated something unprecedented in galactic history. You have shown us that the care of young ones transcends not just species boundaries, but the very laws of physics themselves. Rowan thought back to all the impossible moments that had led to this day. The ZK Thrax hatchlings learning to play quantum tag with Void Crawler young. Pyroxian infants developing the ability to control their plasma emissions through meditation techniques taught by ancestral children. The day they discovered that the quantum-modified coffee maker had accidentally achieved enlightenment and was offering therapy sessions to stressed parent entities. But more than that, the council continued, you have shown us that what we once considered limitations were actually opportunities for growth. The quantum storm incident, which should have been a disaster, instead became a breakthrough in interspecies development. The ceremony that followed would be recorded in countless galactic histories, though each species would describe it differently. The quantum hive saw it as a beautiful probability matrix of potential futures. The ancestrals perceived it as a complex thought form of evolving possibilities. The Pyroxians registered it as a symphony of perfectly controlled energy states. To Rowan, it was simply the natural evolution of what humans had always done best, caring for those who needed it, finding solutions where none seemed possible, and turning chaos into opportunity. The Council's declaration made it official, Earth would become the galaxy's center for interspecies care and development. New facilities would be built across the planet, each specializing in different aspects of Xenacare. The original facility would serve as both training center and research institute, studying the unexpected benefits of their interspecies approach. Director Hayes, the AI interrupted, its voice now carrying quantum harmonics that made it sound like a choir of probability functions. We're receiving applications from 347 new species, including one that exists only in theoretical mathematics. Well, Rowan smiled, watching as a group of Pyroxian young ones performed a quantum ballet with void crawler children, creating patterns of light and shadow that somehow told stories in 5 different temporal dimensions simultaneously. I suppose we'll need to expand the theoretical physics daycare wing. The legacy of the Interstellar Youth Exchange Center extended far beyond childcare. It became a symbol of humanity's unique contribution to galactic civilization, not through superior technology or military might, but through their capacity to care, adapt, and find joy in the impossible. As the ceremony concluded, a young ancestral being approached Rowan, its energy pattern shifting in what had become recognizable as excitement. Director Hayes, we've been working on something with the other young ones. Would you like to see? What followed was a display that brought tears to the eyes of every species capable of producing them. The young ones, working together across species boundaries, had created a new form of quantum art, a living, breathing manifestation of joy that existed simultaneously in all known dimensions and a few new ones they'd apparently invented for the occasion. How did you manage this? One of the council members asked, their usual formal demeanor slipping in the face of such beauty. A human trainee working with the group smiled. We just asked them what they wanted to create and helped them figure out how to do it together. Sometimes the best solutions come from letting them show us what's possible. The facility's legendary coffee maker chose that moment to dispense cups of what it claimed was liquid possibility with a hint of quantum harmony. Nobody quite understood how it worked, but everyone agreed it was the best coffee in any dimension. As Rowan watched the celebration unfold, they reflected on how far they'd come from those first nervous days with the ZK Thrax hatchlings. They'd built something unprecedented, not just a facility, but a new way of thinking about care, growth, and possibility. The AI chimed one final time. Director? The theoretical mathematics species is asking if we can teach their probability functions how to dream. Rowan shared a look with their team. Another impossible challenge. Another chance to prove that in the vast, weird, wonderful galaxy, humanity's greatest strength was their ability to care for anyone, anywhere, in any dimension. Well, they said, I suppose it's time to invent quantum bedtime stories. Anyone know any good lullabies in theoretical calculus?